Hey viewers, I said I would do another video covering pistol mods at some point, and now is as good a time as ever. Strap in because this is going to be a long one, since I have 15 pistol mods to cover today, listed on screen right now. From this crop, it's difficult to choose one or two winners because most of these mods aren't very good. Some of them looked great in the screenshots, but left me sorely disappointed when I tried to use them. But I have to choose a victor, and it's going to be the vintage Pistol Mauser C96. This pistol has a few tiny problems, but overall, it's a beautiful, well-balanced, lore-friendly weapon. As a runner-up, I'm selecting the Beretta M9A3 mod, but be aware that it has balancing issues and the power armor double footsteps bug. Those are my recommendations. Now let's take a look at all of these mods in detail. First up is the 30 Carbine pistol Automag 3. This pistol requires munitions like many weapons coming out nowadays, and it has one unique variant called Blackout, which can be found at the Railroad HQ. Besides that, it's injected into leveled lists and can be found on various enemies and at vendors. It's not too uncommon. The model looks excellent, and this weapon has some nice custom animations in first person. In third person, it's using 10mm animations. In power armor, luckily everything works perfectly fine, and once again 10mm animations are used in third person. As far as balance goes, an unmodified Automag does over twice the damage of a stock 10mm pistol while weighing less and having a similar reload time. But it holds fewer rounds in the magazine, has a higher action point cost in VATS, and most importantly has much harsher recoil. Even comparing both weapons fully tricked out, the Automag has recoil that cannot be tamed, while the 10mm is a much easier weapon to use, even when modified to fire fully automatic. However, there is a perk magazine that can be stolen from Arturo's house in Diamond City that makes the Automag do 15% more damage, which really does start to make it overpowered, especially the unique Blackout variant. But depending on how you've set up munitions, your use of these weapons may be limited by the availability of 30 Carbine and 12.7mm rounds, so that's a factor to consider. To sum it up, the balancing is not great, but it's passable. For attachments, there's an okay amount of variety. You've got your silencers, extended slides, compensators, receiver upgrades, better grips, larger magazines, a laser sight, everything you'd expect from a pistol. I think this is a very good mod, and you might as well download it if you already use munitions, because you're going to need a lot of weapons to justify all these new ammo types, and this is one of the few weapons available that uses 30 caliber rounds. Our second mod is the H&K P30L. This gun's real-life claim to fame is being the gun Keanu Reeves used in the John Wick movies. This mod is ESL flagged, and it has a leveled list integration patch if you want that. Otherwise, you can craft it at a chem lab since there's no pre-placed spawns or unique variants. I have to say, this weapon has an incredible model and gorgeous custom animations for both first and third person. Unfortunately, it has the all-too-common first-person power armor double footsteps bug. There's no fix for it, so you'll just have to deal with it. In third-person power armor, deliverer animations are used and they look just fine. This weapon is somewhat overpowered to start with, its base version boasting more damage, a faster fire rate, larger mag capacity, and less weight than a 10mm pistol. However, the P30L does have slightly higher recoil and a longer reload time, and a fully upgraded 10mm pistol or deliverer can surpass it in some regards, so it's not that unbalanced in the grand scheme of things. As for attachments, there really aren't that many. There's no optics, only a few barrels, a quick magazine, a compensator, suppressor, some underbarrel flashlights, and that's really it. I would have liked to see some scopes and different magazine sizes, maybe some material options, but they don't exist. In the end, this is an okay weapon, but the Beretta M9A3 uses the same animations and has way more attachments, so I would prefer that mod instead. Third up, we've got the FN502 Tactical. This gun is chambered in vanilla 38 caliber by default, but it can add its own 22 LR ammo type or use one supplied by munitions or a caliber complex, depending on what you'd prefer. There's also a purple lens fix available for non-NVIDIA cards. This weapon has no unique variants and isn't distributed into leveled lists, so you can only craft it at a chem lab or find it in the sole survivor's bedroom safe. The model is great, it's got all sorts of little inscriptions and details. It uses the same animations as the P30L, which means it has the same first-person power armor footsteps glitch, and of course there is no fix. Much like the P30L, it's a bit overpowered, dealing far more damage than its 38 caliber would justify. It does have a significantly higher action point cost, making it a poor performer in VATS. But for real-time combat, it overshadows all the vanilla alternatives, even when they've been fully upgraded. Its attachments are similar to the P30L, but there's more of them, which is good. In addition to everything the P30L has, it also has alternative ammo types, a handful of optics, and 3 different material options. This is a much better weapon overall compared to the P30L, especially if the offbeat power armor footsteps don't bother you. If you want to use it, I'd recommend finding a leveled list injection patch though. Our 4th pistol is the Fallout London Luger. Fallout London might not be out yet, but at least we've got this Luger. This weapon has no unique variants, but it does have leveled list injection. The model looks good, its textures seem a little basic, but maybe that's just me. Its custom animations are slow and considerate, kind of like the vanilla game's weapons. In fact, the draw, holster, sprint, and grenade throw animations are all taken from vanilla, with only the fire and reload animations being custom. The pistol doesn't have custom animations in third person, sadly, instead using the Deliverer's set. At least there are no problems in power armor, thankfully. The base Luger has a lower action point cost and higher damage than the 10mm pistol, but it's heavier and has a smaller magazine size with a lengthier reload time. The gun also has a strange downwards camera recoil when firing from the hip, which can throw your aim off. Even though the base version of this weapon is balanced, when you start adding in military-grade ammunition and better receivers, the damage goes through the roof. Getting over 90 damage with a 10mm caliber pistol with no damage increasing perks is insane. In short, this weapon looks balanced at first, but it's actually extremely overpowered. And I wish this Luger had more attachments. This is a World War II weapon, so I will cut it some slack, but they could have added paint jobs, more grips, an automatic fire mode, different kinds of suppressor, I don't know. It just feels a bit bare bones. This weapon disappointed me a lot, especially since it's a release from such a large team. I thought it was going to be great, but it turned out to be just okay, nothing to write home about. 5th, we've got the Benelli B76. This weapon has no unique variants, but it does have leveled list integration, although it directly edits the leveled lists instead of using an injection script. There's no way to put this nicely. This weapon is ugly. Everything about it looks bad, but the hammer looks especially terrible. Its animations aren't any better since they're taken from the vanilla Deliverer. That does at least mean it works fine in power armor. As far as balancing goes, this weapon sweeps the floor with an unmodified 10mm pistol in every single way except weight, but it gets outclassed quickly since it has no attachments at all. That's right, 0 attachments. That really sucks. This mod is amateurish. It screams my first mod. I don't want to dwell on it, so skip this one. 6th on the list is the SilencerCo Maxim9. Make sure to download its hotfix file from the Nexus page. The mod doesn't have leveled list integration or unique variants, but there is a munitions patch that injects the gun into leveled lists and changes its caliber to 9mm. Besides that, there's one pre-placed spawn in the glowing sea with a golden skin, and you can craft the Maxim9 at a chem lab. The model looks decent, but this isn't a very attractive looking pistol. It reminds me a lot of the Magnum from Halo. It uses Deliverer animations which fit very poorly. The thumb clips through the slide egregiously during the reload and draw animations, but at least it works in power armor. The balancing is pretty much screwed. The Maxim9 already comes close to outclassing a souped-up 10mm pistol right out of the box, and adding attachments just makes things unfair. Being able to fire as fast as you can click and doing thousands of damage per second is just silly. The golden version is even more hilariously overpowered, doing extra damage just because it's gold, I guess. There are a lot of attachments for this weapon, including over a dozen paint jobs, optics, there's underbarrel attachments, but without custom animations, I just can't recommend this weapon. It's mediocre. Next up, we've got my second place mod, the Beretta M9A3. It comes in 1K, 2K, and 4K texture versions, and I'm displaying the 2K version here. Whichever download you choose, it comes with a FOMOD installer that has a built-in AMD lens fix, tactical reload support, optional leveled list injection, and patches for every caliber mod under the sun. You can also turn this weapon into a replacer for the 10mm pistol if you'd like. I wish every mod had an installer as good as this. Anyways, if you choose to add leveled list injection, you can only find this weapon on gunners, vendors, and boss enemies. It isn't very common, but you can always craft it at a chem lab if you can't find it. There's also one unique variant called Samurai, which can be found at the Nanako residence inside Kenji's safe. The model and texture work is truly excellent, but this gun reuses animations from the FN502, which means it has the double footsteps bug in power armor and there is no fix available. As far as balance goes, it's a little bit overpowered in its unmodified state, thanks to a higher base damage but otherwise roughly equivalent stats to the vanilla 10mm pistol. Further upgrades can bring that damage into near absurd territory, but the weapon is still somewhat kept in check by its slow fire rate. It's definitely overpowered, but it's not a mass murder machine. Its attachments are mostly the exact same as the FN502, but there are way more material swaps available, so that's good. Overall, this is a great weapon, but it's hard to say whether it's better or worse than the Beretta 92FS I reviewed in my previous mod battle video on pistols. They both have their upsides and downsides. This Beretta has more attachments and better animations, but the other Beretta had more legendary variants and didn't have the double footsteps bug. I guess you have to pick your poison. That's all you can do when modding this game. 8th on this very long list is the Gyrojet rocket pistol. It's another weapon that requires munitions. This pistol has no unique variants or leveled list integration and can only be found amongst the Treasures of Jamaica Plain. The Gyrojet has a really cool and detailed model, but it's using deliverer animations, albeit with a sped up reload. The animations work in power armor, but once you enter power armor, the reload loses its extra speed until you leave power armor and switch weapons for whatever reason. You might expect a handheld rocket pistol to be extremely overpowered, but actually it's perfectly balanced. These rockets are slow moving and don't do very much damage, and because the weapon has almost no attachments, there's no way to upgrade it beyond making it automatic and adding explosive rockets. Even then, the DPS is not very good. This is an interesting novelty weapon, but I don't think it's worth downloading unless you really want the rocket ammo type from munitions placed into your game everywhere. 9th up is the defense pistol. This mod has two unique variants, one called Bloodied Hands that can be found at the North End Boxing Gym, and another massively overpowered variant called Adam's Caliber that fires explosive radioactive bullets. This weapon is also injected into leveled lists. This pistol is an unholy abomination that resembles a Glock, but is also attempting to emulate Fallout 4's rounded, toy-like weapon models. It looks very simplistic and undetailed, and on the animation front, it's Deliverer O'Clock again. If this thing's appearance didn't turn you off immediately, you'll be happy to know it's also quite overpowered, with double the base damage of other 45 caliber weapons, and that's not even taking the ridiculous uniques into account. Its only real downside is its 10-round magazine, upgradable to a paltry 14. Speaking of upgrades, there really isn't many of them. There's no paint jobs, no optics, no laser sights, nothing but receiver upgrades, glow sights, suppressors, and 3 barrels. My final word on the defense pistol is that it's a horrible weapon with no redeeming qualities. If you want a Glock, get the Glock 19X mod I reviewed in my earlier pistols video, and forget that this one exists. 10th up is the Mauser 1914. It comes in both 2K and 4K texture varieties. I'm showing off the 2K version. It has no unique variants, but it is injected into leveled lists and has one pre-play spawn at the Diamond City Noodle stand. This pistol is so ugly, I can't even believe there is a 4K version. The model is terrible, the iron sights are unusable, and it even has missing faces inside the barrel. And it's using deliverer animations like so many other bad pistol mods. This Mauser has very few attachments, 2 barrels, 2 grips, 2 magazines, 2 muzzle devices, and an automatic fire mode that does more damage than the semi-auto fire mode. Despite that weirdness, this weapon isn't too terribly overpowered. But even if it was, who would want to use such a hideous gun? Ignore it, and download our next mod, which is my recommended mod. It's another Mauser, but this time the even older C96 pistol. It comes with both a munitions and non-munitions version. Both versions have leveled list injection, which makes this vintage pistol quite a common weapon being found on most enemy types. There's also one unique variant called the Smuggler's Sidearm, based off of Han Solo's blaster, which can be found at the Red Rocket in the Glowing Sea. It uses microfusion cells as ammo, but it's still loaded with bullets. But I won't question it because it feels good to wash my eyes out with a weapon that isn't disgustingly ugly and actually has custom animations. And they are some damn good animations, at least in first person. In third person, the weapon is loaded through an invisible magazine, even if you should be using stripper clips. In power armor, there is an idle animation issue where the one-handed grip becomes two-handed whenever you start moving. It's a little distracting, but it could have been worse. In third person power armor, this weapon uses 10mm animations, which look okay. If you're worried about balance, don't be. Damage is a bit on the high side for a 45 or 10mm weapon, but it's offset by higher recoil and a very slow fire rate in full auto compared to vanilla weapons. I think this mod is very well balanced. One issue I did notice is the Smuggler's Sidearm unique does 0 damage if you use any receiver other than the Smuggler's receiver it comes with. That might be an issue with a munitions patch, I don't know. The attachment variety is great too. There's scopes, a laser sight, 4 different finishes, a bunch of unique barrels, a stock. Switching from stripper clips to an internal magazine actually changes the reload animation. Man, this is pretty damn good. I hope you can see why I recommended this pistol. Let's move on to the 12th mod on our list, the Frommer's Stop. This weapon has no unique variants, but it's injected into leveled lists, although it can be hard to find. It has a pretty good model, not super detailed, but more than adequate. It's sadly using deliverer animations. You know what to expect from that. Obviously it works fine in power armor. Its balancing is good. When fully upgraded, it might do a little too much damage for a 38 caliber weapon, but it's okay. It won't mercilessly slaughter everything in your path. Even the 43 damage full auto receiver isn't too overpowered, since you'll need Gun Nut 4 to get it, and by then you'll have found better weapons than this. Its attachments are surprisingly good for a World War I era weapon. There's multiple bayonets, a dozen paint jobs, many different optics, suppressors, and a few different barrel lengths. Overall, this is a pretty good mod. I just wish it had custom animations. 13th, we have Glock Pistol Standalone. It adds one unique tan variant which can be found on a vendor somewhere in the Commonwealth. But I can't find it since it spawned via a script, and I don't have time to spend hours looking for a tan pistol. This video has taken too long already. Besides the very well hidden unique, this weapon has leveled list injection, mainly placing the weapon on raiders and gunners. The Glock's model is very detailed. Its texture is a bit basic, but it gets the job done. What's more interesting is the custom animations. I really love the reload, but I'm not so keen on the sprinting, draw, and fire animations. The idle position of the hands is kind of weird too. But what impressed me is not only does this weapon have custom third-person animations, it even adds some for third-person power armor, something we almost never see. For balance, the unmodified Glock does the exact same damage as an unmodified 10mm pistol, although it has better accuracy and range. Counterbalancing this is its heavy weight. With modifications, the only balancing problem is the automatic fire mode doing the exact same damage as its semi-automatic counterpart. It's not significant enough to make the weapon overpowered, however. In general, the balance is okay. There's a decent selection of attachments, but not quite as many as the Glock 19X I reviewed in my other mod battle on pistols. In particular, some more optics would have been nice to see, and a few material swaps too. Regardless, this mod is actually kind of a hidden gem, and I enjoyed using it. It's not nearly as good as the Glock 19X, but nonetheless, it's an admirable effort that deserves praise. 14th is the Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0. This weapon has one unique variant, the Law, which can be found at the South Boston Police Department. It also has leveled list integration, although there's an optional file to remove it. I like this gun's model and textures, but unfortunately it uses deliverer animations. It also has an obnoxiously loud firing sound. It's not ear-shattering, but it should have been toned down a few decibels. There is an alternative firing sound you can select at the workbench, but amazingly it's even worse. This pistol is balanced a bit on the weak side. It starts with more damage than a regular 10mm pistol, but its receiver upgrades don't do much to improve that damage, so it gets outmatched by other weapons quickly. It also has poor accuracy and range. However, its action point cost in VATS is very good, and there are plenty of modifications to reduce the cost further, so this pistol might be good for a VATS build. There's a good selection of attachments. You've got caliber conversions, optics, silencers, grips, underbarrel lasers. All that's really missing is some alternative skins. I like this weapon, I just wish it had some custom animations and a better firing sound. Our 15th and final mod is the Capital Wasteland 10mm pistol. This weapon has no unique variants, but it's integrated into leveled lists wherever the regular 10mm pistol can be found. I've always liked Fallout 3's 10mm pistol design more than Fallout 4's, and this mod does a good job recreating it. Its animations are based on vanilla 10mm animations with the left hand unceremoniously removed to give us a one-handed grip. It doesn't look great, and it doesn't affect third person, but at least there aren't any problems in power armor. The classic 10mm stats are nearly identical to the vanilla 10mm pistol, albeit with extra weight, coupled with additional range and accuracy. Its attachments also seem to take their cues from the vanilla 10mm pistol, resulting in a weapon that is well balanced because it doesn't take any risks. This weapon's attachments are seriously disappointing. This capital Wasteland 10mm pistol has fewer attachments than its Commonwealth counterpart, with barrel and grip modifications being absent. At least it has a bunch of cool skins, but there could have been so much more. It's a letdown. Oh well. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video. I had to endure 12 crashes and 2 blue screens to make it, and it didn't turn out perfect, but whatever. Next week I'm doing armor mods, so stay tuned. But until then, viewers, toodles!